Hello there, I'm Bonibert, and I just got done with my Pokemon Scarlet Nuzlocke. Now, I was on the phone with my friends on a Friday afternoon when I was like, hey, what should we do? And then all three of us got the bright idea to do a Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Nuzlocke. It only took me 2.5 days to beat it because I had skip cutscenes on and fast text speed, and because I knew the game very well. As for how the Nuzlocke went, it went pretty well. I beat the game fairly easily with minimal casualties. I'll get into those in a little bit, but I'm just going to be telling you how I played. Now, these games can be kind of hard to Nuzlocke or confusing because it's an open world map. So what I did was go to each area and province and looked at what I could find and just catch a Pokemon. I had to nickname the Pokemon, and of course if they fainted in battle, they died. Now, I hadn't done a Nuzlocke in about 4 or 5 months, so it was pretty fun, but I forgot how stressful it was. Let's get into the encounters. I'm only going to go over the important encounters because I know you guys don't really care. Now, my first Pokemon was my starter, Skeleturge. Me and my friends all chose it because we figured it would be the best for a Nuzlocke. I mean, it's good against a lot of the bosses, and Torch Song is a broken move. And yes, this guy did survive to the very end. Now, my second encounter on Poco Path was a Palmy, which evolved into a Palmot very early. This thing basically carried me through the early game because I had a Palmot before I even fought Cloth. I'll get into what happened to it at the end of the Nuzlocke, but let's just move on to the next encounter. The next encounter was a Fido that later evolved into a Darkspawn. Now, it didn't die or anything, I just put it in the box because I found a better fairy type, but this thing was on the team for quite a long time. Now, we actually have an accidental encounter with being Sawsbuck. I was trying my best to get a Riolu before I fought Cloth because I had no counters to it, when I accidentally ran into a Deerling. Now, I thought about killing it because I never thought I would use a Deerling, but I ended up catching it and I evolved it. This thing was actually really good, and I'll get into what happened to it in the actual playthrough segment. Now, the next encounter was actually another accidental encounter. It was a Mudbray. I was looking to catch a Mankey because I couldn't catch a Riolu, and I just stumbled upon a Mudbray. I wasn't intending on catching it, but I caught it, and it was a beast. It was especially a beast in the late game. I should probably stop saying this, but I'm going to get into what happened to all these Pokemon in the playthrough segment, so let's just move on to the next encounter. Now, this is a Pokemon I never thought I would use, but it was actually pretty helpful. I left it in the box when I caught it because I already had a full team of 6 and I was happy with my team. But after something happened, I needed to train this guy up, and he ended up being amazing. He was used as my fairy type counter, and he put in a lot of work. Now, in the Asado Desert, I caught a Tinkatink, and later evolved it into Tinkaton. I was really excited to use it because I like Tinkaton. I tried to protect this thing holding a big hammer with all of my heart, and you'll just have to see what happens to it. Now, the next encounter is Toddle the Titan, and this man was an absolute monster. He sweeped dragon types easily, destroyed grass types with ease, and was honestly the GOAT of the team, besides one more Pokemon that I'll get into in a minute. He was my second highest level Pokemon, besides the one I'm going to name in a minute, and I'm just happy that I kept him to the very end. Or, I tried to, at least. Now, the final Pokemon I want to touch on is Palafin. I needed a counter against Mela because the only thing I had was Mudbray, and I thought, hey, what about Fennezen? I used it in my normal playthrough, and it was an absolute beast. And it was even better in this playthrough. It OHKO'd a lot of important Pokemon, and this guy was practically my ace of the team. If you're in the middle of a Pokemon Scarlet or Violet playthrough, get a Fennezen. They're basically anywhere, and once you evolve it, you'll have a beast. Okay, there's one more Pokemon I want to talk about, but I won't talk about it for that long. Now, I ran into a Meditite on accident, and I had the perfect nickname for it. I named it Andrew Tite. I mean, that's the only reason I want to talk about it, because funny. Okay, just a couple more things. I caught 4 full odds shiny during this playthrough. And my friend actually found a full odds shiny Mankey, and he evolved it into a shiny Annihilate that survived to the very end. But let's talk about my shinies. I got a shiny Squovit right in the middle of the game. It was just random. Then, a couple minutes later, I found a shiny Teddiursa. I was planning on using it as backup if anything went wrong, but I didn't have to. But just like 10 minutes after I found the shiny Teddiursa, I found the shiny Golduck, and it was marked. Probably one of the rarest shiny Pokemon I have because it's a full odds marked shiny. That's not something you get every day. And the last shiny of the playthrough was a shiny Lechonk. I was just running around for fun, not doing much, and then all of a sudden this little guy popped up. I don't know how I got this lucky during a Nuzlocke playthrough, but hey, I'll take it. Now, this next segment's going to be a little longer. It's the segment based on the playthrough. I'm going to be telling you about the deaths and just important battles in general. I'll be going over each boss and just tell you what happened. Now, the first few bosses I defeated with ease. I one-shotted the Cloth with Palmot. I used Crocolore to defeat Katie. I also used Crocolore to beat Brassius. Palmot took out the Bombardier with ease. This was definitely the easiest boss in all of the playthrough. And although I was a little underleveled for the Orthworm, I still did really well against it. Just having Crocolore is broken. Now, the boss that gave me the most trouble was Iono. None of my Pokemon died or anything. The Mismagius was just really annoying. And I had to heal stall because she confused me and she used Hexed, and that's not a good thing. I ended up burning it with Crocolore, and I took it out. Now, after Iono, I decided to fight Mela. I was pretty confident, but she actually got really close to taking out Mudbray. So I ended up switching between Mudbray and Finizen to take her out. The Torkoal was actually the hardest part of the battle, believe it or not. And after that, I took on Giacomo. He's the easiest Team Star leader, so Palmot handled him with ease. After Giacomo, I took on, Kofu. Yeah, Kofu. His first two Pokemon were pretty easy, but the Crabominable almost led to my first death. I taught Darkspun the Thunderfang because it just needed a better moveset, so I sent it in against the Crabominable. But one Crabhammer later, and Darkspun was in red HP. I switched it out and sent in Sawsbuck. Now, I was planning on sacking this guy because he hadn't really done that much, but when I thought he was about to die, he survived in like 10 HP, and then he one-shotted the Crabominable with Energy Ball. And that's the point when I realized Sawsbuck is actually pretty good. And I was actually really excited to kick some booty later in the playthrough. I was starting to get attached to him. He was my only grass type, and he was actually really good. This is around the same time when I caught Tinky the Tinkaton. I had trained it up to fight against the Great Tusk because I was really scared for it. And I was actually really excited to use it. Speaking of Great Tusk, this thing was an absolute monster. In my original playthrough, I underestimated it and I thought I could take it on. And I ended up losing. So I was very careful in this Nuzlocke. I trained up everybody to late 30s and I started the battle. Palafin went in. I flip-turned. Sawsbuck came out. Knockoff did half of Sawsbuck's HP. I used Energy Ball. It took down half of the Great Tusk's HP. That's when I realized Sawsbuck was about to die. I went for one more Energy Ball, but it was faster. The Great Tusk used Brick Break, and I had my first death. The Pokemon I was getting attached to actually died. The first death is always the hardest in a Nuzlocke. Phineas was just starting to get good, but then the stupid Great Tusk had to two-shot him. Now, after that, I decided to train up. I made everybody get to above level 40. It was around this time that I decided to take on Atticus, because I had a Mudsdale by now, and it just one-shotted everything. I put Toddle on the team, and I went to take on the second phase of Great Tusk. It started off the same way. I flip-turned out of there with Palafin. Then, I sent in Tinky the Tinkaton. Tinky got about 2 play roughs in, and it did a lot of damage. And Tinkaton was taking the hits like a boss. Tinkaton was above half HP when it got hit by a critical hit. Brick Break. No, this death definitely wasn't as bad as Phineas. Tinky wasn't on the team for long, but it still hurt. The Pokemon I trained up for this fight just died. Sent in Palafin to destroy the monster, and I won. But this thing caused my first 2 deaths. I added Varoom to the team, and I leveled it up, and it evolved into a Reveroom. I also took on Larry, and he was definitely the easiest. Just a couple of moves from Palma, and it was over. I decided to take on Rhyme next because I was a little bit overleveled. So Titan and Skeletor took care of everything. No close calls, it was just an easy gym battle. Tulip was next up, and Skeletor shook out everything besides the Farigiraf, which got taken out by Tuttle. Now, this is around the same time where I decided to grind for the final badges of the game. I knew Grusha would be very simple, so I went ahead and took him on, and I one-shotted everything with Skeletor. And I also took on Ortega, which Revavroom handled with ease. But what I was very worried for were the final two badges of the game, which was the Dondozo Titan and Aerie. In case you didn't know, Aerie is one of the hardest bosses in the game. Her Pokemon are in the mid-50s when you battle her. It's really hard if you don't know what's coming. That's what happened in my first playthrough. I almost lost, but thankfully I had some counters to her. I'll talk about this battle in a little bit, but let's just talk about how I grinded. If you're in the middle of a playthrough and you're a little underleveled, just eat a normal Encounter 2 sandwich, go to the fairy base, and just grind on chances. My team was in the mid-50s in no time for the Dondozo battle. Speaking of the Dondozo battle, it was very easy. Okay, it wasn't very easy. Palma almost got one-shotted by Aquatail. But after I healed and I wild charged, it was easy. And the Tatsugiri got, I think, two-shotted by Titan. So I really had no reason to worry. But next up was the Aerie battle. I was so worried that I grinded up to the early 60s. I knew this fight wouldn't be easy, but it actually kind of was. Palafin Hero form is probably the most broken Pokemon in a playthrough. The base stat total of 650. It can sweep about pretty much anything. And just a couple of acrobatics, and it was over. I sweeped Aerie with a Palafin. This is the point where I decided the ace of my team. And I had to keep this thing alive to the very end. Now came the longest grinding session of the game. The Elite Four was really scary. Even though I was up to the 60s, their Pokemon still stood as a threat. I'm not going to go over each battle, but this is how it went. Oh, and by the way, me and my friends, we decided to do this all together. You know, just because it's fun. I swept Rika with Palafin and the big horse, Mudsdale. The little baby was swept by Skeletor. Larry was swept by a mixture of Skeletor, Palma, and Titan. But Hassel was a different story. This man specializes in dragon types. And if you looked at my team, you would see that I only had one counter to dragon types. Sure, Titan's a really strong Pokemon, but its defenses are horrible. The only good thing is its HP and attack. I went into the battle with a good strategy. I led with Skeletor because he leads with Noivern, and the Noivern has Super Fang, which halves your HP. If I led with Titan, then it would have half HP for the rest of the battle, and that would not be good. After Noivern, Hassel sent in Dragalge. I sent in Mudsdale to counter it. One Earthquake and it was down. Now it was Titan's turn. It only had 3 Pokemon left. One Ice Spinner, and the first one was down. But the Haxorus was a different story. It had Iron Head and it was doing so much damage. I stalled out the Iron Head PP, which was exhausting, but I still got it over with. One Ice Spinner, it was down. Then he sent in Baxcalibur. I was worried about this thing because it had Break, but then there was a bigger problem. It terrestrialized and it used its signature move, Glaive Rush. I thought Titan could take it, but when it hit him, it crit. Titan was still alive. It survived on 30 HP. I stalled out the Glaive Rush PP, and then I hit it with a critical hit Ice Spinner, and I beat him. Probably one of the toughest battles in this whole Nuzlocke. It was time for Gita. Probably one of the easiest champions. I sweep your team. Palafin was easily the MVP. It one-shotted the King Gambit, the Glamora, and, well, Skeletor did a lot of work, too. It was time for Nemona, and I sweeped her team with Palafin. Yes, Mudsdale did do a lot, and so did Skeletor. But Palafin put in most of the work. Surprisingly, this was a battle I was worried about, because I almost lost in my original playthrough. But I won no problem. I probably should have mentioned that I fought Arvin before all of that happened, but he was pretty easy, so it doesn't really matter. Now, I did the Clavel fight with a lot of confidence in my Pokemon. I mean, they were almost in their 70s, and I thought it would be fine. The battle was going swell until the Quaquaval came out. I sent out Palmont. I terrestrialized and used Double Shock, but the Quaquaval survived. One Aqua Step, Palmont was in 16 HP. My first encounter. I figured I should sack him. He hasn't really done much in the late game, so I figured I'd let him die. The Quaquaval used Aqua Step. And Palmont survived at 1 HP because of affection. It used Sparked and took out the Quaquaval. Paused the Palmont survived. Then I took on Penny and beat her up with Mudsdale and Revavroom. It was time for Area 0. Me and my friends, we prepared for the AI Sada and AI Toro fight, and we went into Area 0. My team, all in their early 70s, about to fight. We battled the Paradox Pokemon and went into the cave. We all reached Professor Sada and Turo at the same time, and the battle begun. Palafin flip-turned out of there. I sent in Skeledirge. It took out most of her Pokemon. I sent in Revavroom, expecting it to take out the Fluttermane, and it did. Mudsdale taking out the Sandy Shocks. It was time for the Roaring Moon. This thing is known for taking out at least one Pokemon on your team. I sent in Palmont, not knowing it had Earthquake. I was expecting a Quick Claw boost, but nothing happened. The Roaring Moon one-shotted my Palmont. The first encounter. The one that carried me through the early game. A very strong addition to the team. The one that helped me defeat some of the first bosses. Died at the last. I sent in Palafin, and it two-shotted with Drain Punch. I won, but at what cost? Pause, you will be remembered, you valiant soldier. So, that was my Pokemon Scarlet Nuzlocke. So, let's see how I did. I beat the game in 2.5 days with only 3 deaths, and 2 of those deaths came from one boss. Now, I believe one of my friends had about 6 deaths, and the other, I think he had around 15. I'm not quite sure on the exact number. He sadly did not survive the AI Sada battle. I had the least amount of deaths out of all of us. I had no clue I was going to turn this into a video, but I'm pretty happy with it. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like. I had a lot of fun making this video, and if you want to see more like it, just tell me in the comments. Make sure you subscribe. I'm so close to 200. Subscribing is free, and if I reach 1,000 and get 4,000 watch hours, I can be monetized. That's a wrap.